You are listening to the Life Coach School podcast with Brooke Castillo, episode number 232.
Welcome to the Life Coach School podcast, where it's all about real clients, real problems, and real coaching. And now, your host, Master Coach Instructor, Brooke Castillo.
What's up, friends? How's everyone today? Amazing. Are you guys amazing? I'm amazing today. I'm so excited. I get to go meet with my interior designer for the Life Coach School headquarters. Oh my God, you guys, how fun is that? We get to go pick out tables and chairs for our conference room. We get to pick out artwork. We're having the most amazing mosaic style art made for the entryway that is the model. It's going to be a mosaic of the model. So cool. We're doing some awesome quotes that we're going to put on the walls from all of the work that we do here at the Life Coach School. We have so many cool things we're doing, so many beautiful things. We're going to have a full kitchen in there. I can't wait. I can't wait for the offices and for the shipping department, and got some cool stuff coming on. So, and the way that we're going to do it is we're going to do all of our high level events there. So we're going to work there every day. I'm going to have an office and a podcast room and a video room there, but we're also going to invite our highest level students that are in our master coach training, in our Million Mastermind, in our 100K Mastermind. That's where we're going to do all of our meetings, is at the school. And it's beautiful. It has like the most beautiful backdrop. So I don't know if you guys know this, but we bought the land to build it. Then they decided they couldn't build our building there. So then we gave up the land, and then we bought it again at a higher price, which was super fun and awesome and very good business. And now we're building a smaller building on the same piece of land because we just really like the location. So super excited. There's a hotel right across the street, and there's restaurants right there, and it backs to a dog walking trail. So if you're Diamond, you can scroll back through the behind the scenes where I actually give you a tour of the land. We're going to be breaking ground here pretty soon. So I'll make sure I keep that in behind the scenes so you can keep track of it being built. Can't wait. And of course, I'll let you know when it's done, and I'll give you the virtual tour. All right. Today, we're going to talk about a concept called the aligned model. And I was thinking about this when I was reading some materials on the law of attraction, and I was thinking about how to help my clients who are really trying to build successful businesses. But this, of course, applies to everything and to anything that you want. And the aligned model, what I mean by that, and remember, this is a more kind of advanced podcast. If this is your very first one, you're probably not going to know what I'm talking about. So you'll need to go back and listen to the model podcast so you understand what the model is. But for those of you who really know what the model is, what I'm talking about with an aligned model means that your circumstance matches your result. And so when you're first starting out, you have your before model, and your before model has a circumstance in it that maybe is an unwanted circumstance. And the result that you want to create, right, is something different than the circumstance. So you have to be in the present state of, let's say in the C line, let's do a weight example. Let's say that you currently weigh 250 pounds. That's your C line, but the result that you want to create is 150 pounds. So your circumstance and your result are not currently aligned with each other. And that's very normal, and that will always be the case in our lives. We always want to have growth opportunities and desired models, intentional models that we are working toward. But there's also going to come times when you're going to achieve that aligned model, when your result is the result that you want and the circumstance is that result, because your new result becomes your new circumstance, which is super fun. And I always call that, it's like a fleeting moment, because then it always seems like there's another thing that we want to do. But like in the case of our weight, that's a really good example. My circumstance is my weight is 150 pounds and my result is I want to create a body that's 150 pounds. They are aligned. And so I want you to think about your aligned models, and the aligned models are the ones that we want to maintain. For the example with maybe money, maybe there comes a point where you want to continue to make a certain amount of money a year. And so then your circumstance per year and your result per year would be aligned. For me, that R is always going to be bigger than the circumstance. I always want to keep growing in that area. So it's just another paradigm, another way to look at your models to see how many models do you have that are aligned, where the result you want is the circumstance that you have. And that's really powerful to see how you're creating that with your thought, feeling, and action. And then to compare it to your unaligned models where your circumstance is something different than what you want. So here's the thing that I want you to recognize is that when your C and your R, your circumstance and your result in your desired model are the same, you live from a different place in your mind. And when they're different, you tend to be tempted to judge your current C at the expense of your R. And I know that sounds confusing to some people, but here's how I want you to think. And this is what I taught you in the last podcast. So make sure you've listened to that one and also in this one. When you want an aligned model, you want to start creating that result to match your circumstance. The middle of that model can change right now. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. Let's use the example of money. Let's say that you in your C line are making $50,000 a year, and in your R line, you want to be making $100,000 a year. And your desired model is your new C line, right? Would be when you've accomplished it, your new C line is 100K in the C line. And the reason why this is a fun exercise to think about it in terms of aligned models is you start to think about what would you be thinking if your C was aligned with your R? What would you be feeling and what would you be doing? The reason why this is so important to recognize is because so many of us can't find the middle of the model to create the result that we want. And the reason is we don't know what is the thought that creates that result. We are in a place where we don't have that result yet. So we keep thinking a thought that makes us feel good about the current circumstance that we have. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't necessarily generate the feelings and the actions that will create the result we want. So when you look at your aligned model where your C and your R match, the middle of that model becomes a lot more clear. Now, here's what's great about the middle of the model. And when I'm referring to the middle of the model, I'm talking about your T, which is your thinking, your F, which is your feeling, and your A, which is your action. You don't have to wait for your model to be aligned in order to start functioning from the middle of that model. You can start being, thinking, feeling, and doing everything that's in the middle of that model now, before you actually have the result, before the model is actually aligned. And I think this might be the answer to so many of your questions when you ask me how. How do you become? How do you practice? How do you, start living from the future? You take the middle of that model and you start living that now, thinking, feeling, acting, as if your model was already aligned. Now, some of you may already be doing that. Some of you may have your C line be your current circumstance, and you may be already living as if you've already created the result, right? You may already be there. And of course, in the very beginning, you're not going to be very good at it, because if you were, you'd already have that result. Right? So you want to start getting good at the middle of your aligned model. So you want to change your mind as if the change has already happened. So when you look at a model that you currently have and you notice that the result that you're currently creating is caused by a thought, feeling, action, and then you look at your aligned model, when you do create the actual result that you want, what will be the difference between how you're thinking and feeling and acting? What is the difference when you're at a lower weight? What is the difference when you're making more money? we are very trained to believe that the circumstance is what drives the thought, feeling, action. And even when you look at the model, it can be misinterpreted to think that the circumstance is causing the rest of it. And that's why it's really important for us to take that middle part out and know that that is optional. No matter what the circumstance is, that is optional. And if we want to create the result that's in line with the circumstance that we want, right? When we want the result and the circumstance to be the same thing and we want them both to be awesome, then we can see, if I already had it, what would I be thinking about? Because already having it is the thought you need to create the result of it. Isn't that crazy? So we want to think our way to a result. How do we get to something? I am working on this. Now, I want you to think about that thought. I'm working on it. I'm trying. I'm getting there. When I have a thought like that, it's not aligned with the result that I want. It's aligned with getting there. It's aligned with the journey, but it's not aligned with actually being there. Because here's the thing. If I already weigh 150 pounds, I don't say to myself, I'm getting there. I'm on my way. I'm trying. Right? When I'm already there, my thought pattern is, this is great. I feel comfortable in my body. I'm going to get on with my life. I'm going to do amazing things. It's a very subtle but incredibly important distinction. And I'm trying to teach it from very different angles because for some reason, it's a very hard concept for us to live within. How do we live within a result that we don't already have? We can understand visualizing the result and thinking about the result that we are going to get in the future. Most of us can do that pretty easily, but can we live in it before we have it? I love this idea that our senses physically are the last part of ourselves to experience our dreams realized. Our senses experiencing it is the last step. You have to experience repeatedly the experience of having it in your mind first. It has to feel real before it becomes real. It's this art of thinking and feeling ahead of time. And all too often, we are trying to live within a model that is trying to get the result instead of living within the model that already has it. Impatience. So many of us are impatient. We're in such a hurry, and it comes from doubt. And if you have doubt, you're not living within the model. You're not living within that realized model. So I was talking to one of my students about this, and she was talking about whether she wanted to pay $25,000 to join this mentoring group. And she said, I just can't afford to join this mentoring group, even though I know that I'll make so much money if I join this mentoring group. And I said to her, but you don't know that you would make a bunch of money if you joined it, because if you knew that, then the $25,000 wouldn't seem like so much money. The reason why it seems like so much money is because you don't believe that you will make the money back. You don't believe that you will make more than it. So you're focused on the scarcity of it. She's living within the model of hope. She's living in the model of maybe, and she's not living in the model of course this will work. I'm going all in. And what I told her is I said, you need to make sure before you sign up for any kind of mentorship program, any kind of program like that, that you are all in, that your brain believes that you will get the result that the mentorship is promising. Because if you don't, you will find all sorts of ways to sabotage you. And so one of the things that I asked her is I said, if you already were at the result that you think joining this group will create, how would you think about spending the $25,000? She's like, it would be a no-brainer. I'm like, right. Most of us need to spend more time with a no-brainer. Get the brain out of it, right? Of course, right? Because if she was living within the model that was already creating that result, she would already be all in. She is all in. She's living within and from that future. And there's no impatience in that, and there's no scarcity in that. There is aligning yourself ahead of time with the result that you want. Aligning yourself with the model. So if you think about when your circumstance isn't aligned with your result, it's very tempting to think from within that circumstance that you currently have instead of thinking from the future of the circumstance that you want to have. What? You guys following me? This is so good. So you have to, and this is a quote from Joe Dispenza, which I absolutely love. He says, you have to think greater than the circumstances of your life. The circumstances of your life have to exist as results from your previous thinking. But in order to have your circumstances be greater than they are right now, you have to start thinking greater than they are right now. Now, people say, well, you have to be realistic. Where is reality? Where does reality exist? Does it exist with your current results, or does reality exist with your future desired results? Which one is more true? Is it more true that I'm sitting here now with you, or that I will be driving to my appointment in the next hour? You get to decide, are those equally true? Is one more true? Can you believe in those both equally? That's so powerful. When you can start believing and thinking greater than the current circumstances of your life, that's when you will make your current circumstances greater. You create those with your mind. I want to ask you guys an honest question. I want you to really, really think about the answer because it matters. How often are you thinking about the future you want? And even more importantly than that, I want you to think about how often are you thinking about the future you want, believing in the future you want, and feeling good about the future you want, and then acting on it? How much of your brain power in a 24-hour day do you use to create your future, to live within your future already? To have the middle of that model be your current experience? Greatness is holding fast to a dream independent of the environment. It's another quote from Joe Dispenza. Greatness is holding fast to a dream independent of the environment, independent of your current evidence. So your current circumstances, your current results are evidence of your past thinking. You understand? Your current circumstances are evidence of your past thinking. They are not evidence of your future. The evidence of your future is yet to be seen because the evidence of your future is a reflection of your current thinking. So if you want to know what's going to be in your future, look at your current thinking. When I look at my current thinking, I look at, I'm going to build a business worth $100 million. I'm going to maintain my body weight. I'm never going to drink again. I'm going to support my kids in creating anything they want in their life. I'm going to work forever alongside my husband and my business partner, Chris. That's what I think about. I think about my future all the time. And that's what we will create. That's what I will create. Right? So you have to hold fast to the idea of what you want to create. Your mind has to be ahead of your current conditions. We want and need our brains to exist in the future because the brain changes first. Remember, your senses are the last to know. Abraham teaches this idea, which I think is totally fascinating, is that as soon as we think of a possibility, it exists and it's just waiting for us to observe it in reality. And we can only observe it in reality when we believe that it's true. What? I love that. Now, how do you know if you're doing this right? How do you know if you're living ahead of yourself, if your mind is in the future? When you can truly and consistently feel the emotion ahead of time, that becomes the fuel for manifesting it. So when I'm living within the middle of that aligned model before the result has shown up to match the circumstance, that's how I know it's as good as done. I never doubt when I'm in that place, when I am feeling the emotion of that accomplishment, when I'm feeling the emotion of having it, of already having manifested it. When I was quitting drinking, I started to feel what it's like to not want alcohol. That's when I knew I had nailed it. Done. I was still going through the habit of drinking it, but I was desiring it less and less. I was living within the model, within that middle of that model. This is another piece from Joe Dispenza. It's really key. When the body remembers better than the mind, that is a habit. Your unconsciousness has been delegated to the task, so you no longer have to think about it. The unconscious habit needs to be fired in order for you to create the new habit of being that new version of yourself. And I was reading Joe Dispenza. I read him every once in a while because I think his stuff is beyond genius, breaking the habit of being yourself. And I've been revisiting his stuff a lot lately because I'm reading it and hearing it on a whole new level. But one of the things that I think is so interesting is that our unconscious mind is just trying to be productive for us, and it picks up habits. It doesn't care if they're good or bad. It just picks up patterns of the middle of the model, right? Thinking, feeling, acting, thinking, feeling, acting. And as soon as we think and feel and act enough times, it goes to our unconscious brain, and then we never think about it again. And in order to think beyond the circumstances that we currently have, in order to go to that next version of ourselves, we have to break the habit of already thinking the patterns that are creating the current results. Unless it's something we want to keep creating, right? I love my middle of the model for my weight right now. And I love the middle of my model for drinking and for my habits of working. Like there's a lot for driving, for all of those, brushing my teeth. Those models are all working beautifully. But there's some models that I want to change, and I need to change the middle of that model in order to align it with what I want. So I think that you have to imagine what you want for your life, right? You have to imagine what is the aligned model that would be perfect for you. What's the minimum standard? Now, notice that the minimum standard for your life is probably what you're living right now. We all kind of live, I'll ask a client that weighs 200 pounds. I'll say, well, why don't you weigh 300? They're like, oh, what? I would never weigh 300 pounds. I'm like, oh, really? Because you have a minimum standard. Most of us have that minimum standard. So what is that? That's probably your current aligned model. And what do you want it to be? What is your dream? How do you think about this, you guys. How do you make the minimum standard for your life to be your dream model? Because like what used to be my dream is now my standard. And that's true for most of us, right? Some of us dreamt about getting married, and now that's our standard. Some of us dreamt about having kids, now that's our standard. We dreamt about buying a house, getting a job, becoming a life coach, building a business. And as we keep dreaming and achieving our dreams and aligning our models, those become our new standards. Those become our new habits of living and being. So the question that I really want you to think through is, are you being the middle of that aligned model? Are you thinking and feeling and acting from that place? And if you aren't, how can you? How can you start becoming your future self, becoming the middle of that aligned model? And I'll promise you that as soon as it happens, I like to look at it. I like to visualize the model kind of shifting into that alignment. And then as soon as it does, you'll have a new model. And so this meta skill of learning how to align your models, of putting whatever you want in your R line as your desired goal, and then moving towards becoming by being the middle of that model until the C reflects it. I just had a huge milestone in my business where my C aligned with my R, where I had an R for a long time of a certain goal, and then the C then reflected it. And I almost felt like everything kind of snapped into place, like that C came from the right and just kind of snapped into the place. And there was this full alignment. And I've told you guys this before, but it's important to remember that I had been living the middle of that model for so long that it felt normal, even though it was super exciting. It wasn't like shockingly exciting. It wasn't like, oh my God, we just won the lottery. It wasn't like that at all. It was just more like, and now we're on to the next. And now I'm living from within a new model, and I'm being from within that model where that result is already being produced, where eventually that new C will snap into that aligned model. So I hope you guys like this concept. It's just another paradigm, another way of looking at how we think about the model and how we can start living from the desired result and thinking as if we already have it until we can take the last step of physically seeing it with our senses. I hope you have a beautiful week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Hey, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, you have to come check out Self-Coaching Scholars. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and we apply it. We take it to the next level and we study it. Join me over at thelifecoachschool.com/join. Make sure you type in the lifecoachschool.com/join. I'd love to have you join me in Self-Coaching Scholars. See you there.